Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to dive into something truly mind-blowing. We're looking at the incredible, minute-by-minute biological journey the human body goes through when someone quits smoking. You know, the human body is just a spectacularly resilient machine. Literally, the moment someone puts out their final cigarette, this fascinating, aggressively robust house-cleaning protocol kicks right into gear. If you've ever wondered exactly how the body heals itself from the inside out, well, you are in for an amazing ride.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the immediate aftermath. Then, surviving the withdrawal phase. After that, we'll cover rebuilding the body, and finally, the long-term rewards.
All right, let's jump straight into part one, the immediate aftermath. Now, before we look at the actual healing process, we really need to understand the massive scale of what the body is recovering from. 1.3 billion? That's the number of people actively smoking worldwide today. And with every single cigarette they light up, they are exposing their internal systems to over 7,000 different chemicals. 7,000! It's just an astronomical burden on the body, which is exactly why smoking is one of the leading causes of preventable death globally. But the incredible thing is, when someone decides to stop, the turnaround is remarkably fast.
I mean, day one is basically an aggressive systemic reset. We're talking major biological shifts happening at 20 minutes, 2 hours, 8 hours, and 24 hours. Let's zoom in on that very first 20-minute milestone.
So, while you're on nicotine, your body is essentially trapped in the state of stress. It's releasing epinephrine and norepinephrine, which artificially spikes your heart rate and severely narrows your blood vessels. That's actually why a smoker's hands and feet so often feel cold. But get this, just 20 minutes after quitting, your blood pressure and heart rate completely normalize. Warm circulation floods right back into your extremities. It is literally an instant physiological sigh of relief for your body.
Which brings us to part two, surviving the withdrawal phase.
Okay, so while the body is busy healing, it's also kind of panicking. And the root of that panic is the dopamine drop. Right around the 2-hour mark, the brain realizes its crutch is completely missing. See, nicotine forces the brain to release abnormally high amounts of dopamine. You know, the feel-good chemical. So when that artificial flood suddenly stops, the cravings hit hard. This steep drop causes moodiness, drowsiness, tense feelings, and even trouble sleeping. It's basically the brain scrambling to figure out how to self-regulate its own chemicals again.
And the battle doesn't stop there. By the 8-hour mark, your bloodstream turns into a microscopic battleground. When you smoke, carbon monoxide literally hijacks your red blood cells. It competes with oxygen for space on your hemoglobin. In long-term smokers, this chronic exposure actually forces the red blood cells to swell up, making the blood dangerously thick and driving up blood pressure. But 8 hours after quitting, that carbon monoxide finally clears out. Oxygen wins the turf war, and your blood oxygen levels return to perfectly normal.
Now this brings us to a really fascinating paradox that pops up exactly one day in. If your lungs are supposed to be healing, why on earth do you suddenly start coughing way more after 24 hours of not smoking? I mean, it feels incredibly frustrating, right? Like you're actually getting worse instead of better.
Well, the answer is surprising and simple. Coughing equals clearing toxins. This increased coughing is absolutely not a setback. In fact, it's a brilliant, aggressive biological response. Your lungs are finally unparalyzed, and they are working serious overtime to sweep out all that accumulated debris and toxic junk. And as this massive internal spring cleaning is happening, your risk of developing coronary artery disease actually begins to measurably drop. All of this is happening within just 24 hours.
But hey, we have to keep it real and validate just how tough this phase gets. At the 72-hour mark, withdrawal symptoms peak. The body is just slammed with severe physical symptoms, headaches, nausea, cramps, alongside intense emotional turbulence like anxiety and depression. This is totally standard for most addictive substances as they leave the body completely. So if you frame this 72-hour window in your mind as the final, most intense hurdle, it helps. Because once you cross this specific line, the absolute worst of the physical withdrawal is officially behind you.
Moving on to part three, rebuilding the body.
Once you get past that brutal 72-hour mark, the body enters this triumphant phase of literally rebuilding its own tissues from the inside out. Let's talk about your senses. By 48 hours, all the nicotine and its metabolites are 100% eliminated from your system. Because of this, your damaged nerve endings actually start to regrow. Think about that. The tar and chemicals in cigarettes physically flatten out your taste buds and strip them of blood vessels. But now, they start regaining their sensitivity. That means for someone quitting, within just 2 days, their favorite meals will literally start to taste significantly better.
Over the first few months, this internal reconstruction really accelerates. At 1 month out, the background risks for type 2 diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular diseases show a very noticeable decrease. And between 3 to 9 months, major structural lung repair is actively taking place. It's so significant that chronic shortness of breath is virtually eliminated.
But what exactly is being repaired inside the lungs to make that happen? It all comes down to these incredible little things called cilia. Cilia are microscopic, hair-like structures that line your airways. Their entire job is to constantly beat back and forth, sweeping away dust, mucus, and debris. Smoking completely paralyzes and destroys them, but somewhere between 3 and 9 months of quitting, the cilia are almost entirely repaired. They finally get back to work naturally cleaning the lungs, which is exactly why that persistent shortness of breath just vanishes.
And finally, part 4, the long-term rewards.
Zooming way out to the years that follow, we start to see some massive, truly life-altering health transformations. 1 year out, your heart disease risk is cut right in half. 10 years out, lung cancer risk is halved. And 15 years out, your heart attack risk completely normalizes. These are profound long-term shifts. So let's unpack exactly why these risks plummet so dramatically. Take the 1-year mark, for instance. Why does the risk of heart disease drop by a massive 50%? Well, it mostly comes down to stopping the formation of something called atheroma. Atheroma refers to the deposits of fatty material and scar tissue that build up when your arterial walls deteriorate, a process that smoking heavily accelerates. By stopping the intake of those 7,000 catechol, you stop continuously damaging your arterial walls. That prevents this deadly buildup and slashes your heart disease risk in half.
Now let's fast forward a full decade. If you compare an active smoker to someone who quit 10 years ago, the quitter's risk of developing lung cancer is slashed by exactly half. That's because 10 solid years of cellular repair means the body has successfully managed to replace countless damaged, mutating cells with fresh, healthy ones.
And then, we reach the truly astounding 15-year milestone. A decade and a half of continuous healing brings the cardiovascular system back to a baseline that feels almost like magic. Your risk of suffering a heart attack remarkably resets to the exact same level as someone who has never even touched a cigarette in their entire life. I mean, it is the ultimate testament to the human body's incredible power to forgive and rebuild.
However, we definitely need a quick reality check here just to ground us. As incredible as this physiological recovery is, the sources make it very clear that some damage does remain irreversible. Depending on the average amount someone smoked per day and the total years they spent smoking, there will always be some permanent scarring to the lungs. A former smoker is always going to retain a slightly increased susceptibility to developing various lung diseases compared to a strict non-smoker. So while the benefits of quitting unequivocally absolutely outweigh the pain of withdrawal, it leaves us with one unavoidable conclusion. Considering the immense, decades-long biological struggle the body has to go through just to heal, what is the absolute best way to prevent this brutal battle altogether? The answer is incredibly simple. Never start at all. The human body is wonderfully resilient for sure, but the sheer cost of putting it through this ordeal is a stark reminder of just how precious our baseline health truly is. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gave you a clear, eye-opening look at the fascinating science of recovery.